All universities had at least one haunted area. At this particular university, when I was going to a swim meet, a girl was burned alive inside her room. An online thread warned that her spirit roamed the female dorm's 6th floor. Once we arrived, my teammates and I were shocked that we'd be staying on the infamous 6th floor. When we got up there, our rooms were pretty and nice. Each room had a big screen TV and a mini fridge next to the bed. We were country bumpkins and had never seen anything like that. I totally forgot about the haunting story. After practice, I got back to the dorm first and wanted to take a shower, so I used the elevator alone. It got stuck. The intercom didn't work and my phone had no signal. Then, the elevator door opened up by itself. The floor I was on looked nothing like the other floors. It was painted blue, dirty, and filled with cobwebs. I saw the number 6. I realized this was the original 6th floor. I rushed to the fire exit. I pushed, but it wouldn't budge. I saw the brick tiles, but this exit was walled up. I turned to the hallway and saw that one of the doors was completely burnt. This must have been where that girl died. Her bullies started a fire and she was burned alive. The door swung open, and that was when I saw her. She was completely charred, clinging to the wall like a spider. She turned her head vertically upside down to look at me. A bunch of cockroaches were in her mouth, and as soon as our eyes met, I started running. I could hear her crawling towards me from behind. I saw a sliding door to the hallway's balcony. It was covered in a weird green slime, and I had a hard time sliding it open, but I used all my strength, and it eventually opened. I closed the door and looked down. There was a much bigger balcony below on the 3rd floor. I heard a scratching sound behind me, but didn't look back. A cleaning lady walked out. She looked up at me and realized I was going to jump. She yelled at me, "Don't!" But I jumped anyway. 15 minutes later, I had to watch my coach apologize profusely to the dorm manager, as if I did something wrong. Apparently they all believed me, but the dorm's manager was just annoyed that he already walled up the floor, but it wasn't enough. Then I was told I had to go back up to the new 6th floor and sleep there. There was nowhere else to sleep, and we couldn't afford a hotel. "Just use the stairs," my coach said. When my left ear hit the pillow, I could hear a scratching sound coming from the old 6th floor below. I know it was her. She was trying to make her way up to me. A bit of a temper, they said. Apparently the boy had thrown a fit in school when he lost a game, and broke the nose of his competitor in a surge of rage as a result. A temper, they said. The other child's parents had agreed not to demand his expulsion if, and only if, they would get him help, and so they ended up contacting me. Now, I had worked with many kids with similar issues before, but somehow Jack was especially, annoyingly, stubborn. There was no trauma here, just a child spoiled rotten. It didn't help that his folks had little faith in therapy, only doing this to prevent having to change schools. I could smell their disdain when they shoved him in and returned to the waiting room. Still, I tried. I truly believed everyone deserved honest care, especially these young minds, but he seemed intent on making this as difficult as he possibly could. Regardless of what I tried, his disrespect simply grew. I asked him if he wanted to tell me about the incident, and I got a grunt. I asked him if he preferred drawing it, and he called it, and me, dumb. I asked him if he'd rather play a game, and he mumbled a clear, bitch. Lastly, I asked him if he would instead prefer talking to Rupert, the therapy doll. Sometimes speaking to him is better than speaking to an adult, I explained. You can tell him anything. Just remember, he hates being yelled at. To anyone else, it would sound like a trick to encourage them to communicate calmly. I knew better though. Unfortunately, that set him off completely, grabbing onto the puppet, screaming and shouting, roaring and shrieking, both incomprehensible sounds and swear words a child his age definitely shouldn't know, simply because he was given one limitation. Better not yell at him, I reminded him with a subtle urgency, but to no avail. It would take another 20 minutes for his parents to take him away, loudly airing their grievances while doing so. At this point, it didn't bother me anymore though. I knew their fate was sealed. A mere 20 hours later, I saw Jack's chubby face in the news. Family of 3 attacked in their own home. 7-year-old is the sole survivor. They described the worrying scene in detail, how Mr. and Mrs. Smith were found butchered, how Jack's vocal cords had been irrevocably damaged and he was lucky to be alive, adding that the boy had written the word doll over and over again. Shock, apparently. I knew the truth. I always took Rupert with me. At least he'll be quiet now, I muttered, looking at the doll. But I do wish you could actually do some of the dirty work. You see, therapy dolls hate being yelled at. And so do I. In 2006, I stayed overnight with a buddy at a second property his family had purchased. It was an old farm just on the outskirts of Florin Road in Sacramento. My buddy's family had not moved in, and he wanted to spend the night on the property to get a feel for it. The previous property's owner's husband passed away, and she sold the home for cheap. What struck me as odd was that she left all the furniture and tons of miscellaneous personal property behind, which we discovered later had belonged to her late husband. I told my friend to get rid of all that junk because in my culture, which was Thai, we believed it was bad luck to hang on to a deceased person's property. The superstition was that the dead might come back and look for their property. That particular night, I spent it on the couch in the living room. My buddy was sleeping on the floor next to me. I could not fall asleep but heard my buddy snoring loudly, and therefore I knew he was in a deep state of sleep and did not witness the events soon to follow. As I was slowly drifting off to sleep, I heard the closet door located about a car length from my feet slowly open. At that point, I became fully alert, but kept my eyes closed. I could hear my heart beating out of my chest. I was laying on my back and I faced the ceiling, slightly opening my eyes and glancing towards the closet. It was a full moon, so the living room was well lit, and that's when I saw it. A black shadow coming towards me from the inside of the open closet. It had the silhouette of a man and stood approximately 7 feet tall by 2 feet wide. It crept towards me, and I was so scared that I just closed my eyes and froze in place. I kept my eyes closed and remained still for what felt like 5 minutes. Then the second half of this paranormal bullshit began. The blanket I had draped over me slowly began pulling off my body. I could feel parts of my upper torso getting cold as the blanket pulled away from my skin towards my feet. I felt each individual hair on my skin stand up because it was so cold. As the blanket continued pulling away and got closer to my feet, I whispered my buddy's name multiple times. "Dennis, Dennis, wake up. Something's going on." Dennis eventually stopped snoring and said, "What the hell, man? I'm trying to sleep." After that, all the paranormal stuff stopped. I wrapped multiple blankets around me and slept in the prone position for the remainder of the night. I never had a more scary paranormal experience. I also have not been back to my buddy's farm since the incident. Sometimes weird things happen when they just can't be explained. That night still bothers me until this day. I think the event took place sometime shortly after midnight, and I thought the couch I was sleeping on was my buddy's, but later discovered it was part of the property that was left behind from the previous homeowner. I think her late husband came back from the dead to reclaim his couch. Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you want to hear more scary stories, please subscribe and I'll keep them coming. Until next time.